You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Curlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host, Ali Garced, aka Ali the Agent. How are you doing, Ali?
I am excellent. We just wrapped up an amazing podcast, and I am actually here in the middle of a conference right now. I loved today's show. And you know what, Craig? I think today was my best one yet. Don't tell people it was my first.
Yeah, I think you just told them. I think it was definitely your best one. I would say you're definitely 1 for 1, batting 1,000, which is a great batting percentage. And honestly, Ali,
Excellent.
thanks for where are you at? You're at a conference. Which conference are you at? And are you in Austin, you said, or somewhere in Texas?
Yeah,
Dallas?
I'm in Austin, Texas for Real
Austin.
Estate Rockstars.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great conference. So I hear. I've never been to it, but I know a lot of people that are probably there. Probably my boy Jordan's probably there. Jordan Moorhead. Aaron, our Mustastegi, is probably there. Give him a high five for me. And
Will
speaking
do.
of high fives, we've got 2 people coming on today, Matt and Melissa, who could give you a high five. And they talk all about their story of, investing out of state, which is kind of incredible. Especially in these times now where the interest rates are a little bit higher, maybe a little bit harder to afford something in your own state. Going out of state is certainly an option. You can start that way. You just got to make sure you build your team and do all the right things. Anything you want to add before we get into the show, Ali?
Yeah, I met Melissa first before meeting Matthew through the REI circle with like AJ Osborne with focusing on investing in commercial real estate. And Melissa being a realtor out in Folsom, California, Matthew being a software engineer, knowing how to run numbers and totally like in the best way ever, I say this, geeking out about analyzation. The two are like a duo couple where together they have done a lot with, and you'll hear this over their story, but out-of-state investing, hard money loans, evictions, self-managing, the whole thing. And they give a couple of really, really good tips as far as how to handle that yourself.
Yeah, and I think they manage it all remotely too. And so, if you are looking to save and kind of bootstrap this real estate investing business that you got out of state, and you want to do it that way, definitely listen through all the way to the end. And we crack some jokes at the very end of the Final Four, which I think is pretty funny. You get to hear their best pickup line, which is certainly mediocre, but Allie's got a real good one she dropped at the end. So make sure you listen all the way to the end. With that being said, let's bring Matt and Melissa onto the show. This episode of Investify was brought to you by the Fi Team, a team of investor-friendly agents that service all 50 states. If you are looking to house hack, to invest, grow your portfolio, and want a true investor-friendly agent on your side, go to thefiteam.com and click Get Started. And we can't wait to have a good conversation with you. Melissa and Matthew, welcome to the show, my friends. How are you doing today?
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, we're super stoked to have you, especially on this special day for us, Mrs. Ali Garced's newest episode. I'm so excited.
Hello. I am super excited to be
Hey,
here
Ali.
interviewing my friends. Melissa and Matthew, you guys, we met a couple of years ago, and I'm stoked to have you on this podcast and for you to share your story.
Heck yeah. So why don't we just start right there? So it's like any good story. Let's start in the beginning. And when did you first hear about financial independence?
So for me personally, I did the same thing everybody else did. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad like close to 20 years ago. I did house hacking when I first got out of college. And always, I come from a family where it's like you get a good job, you have benefits, you stay there and then you retire. And I always had that in the back of my head and struggled with that. So I always struggled with like, do I want to be a real estate investor? Do I want to have a W-2? So basically through the years, we always invested and always had a W-2. And so then of course 2020 hit and things changed and you have a lot of time to look into things. And I think the turning point for me was in 2019, and this was right before the pandemic, so it worked out really well. But in 2019, we did a virtual it was the PNW Badass Conference, real estate conference.
Yeah.
And that's where I actually heard about FI. And there were a lot of people who, it was both real estate and FI. So I literally went on my social media, just deleted everybody that was irrelevant and just started following all kinds of FI people, the real estate. I went and read Set for Life by Scott Trench, and then the pandemic hit, and then we started saying, hey, we really need to get back into real estate. We had always invested, but we had taken a long break once we started having kids, and that's how it happened.
Yeah.
Super cool. So what got you to go to that Pacific Northwest conference? Is that the one that Taro Yarber throws?
Yes, it was funny for me. Actually, it was because, my son was born early. So we had our son in 2014. And at that point, we were really going to start pushing hard with the real estate. We were house hacking. We were doing Airbnb in our in-law unit. We bought a fixer-upper, so we were completely fixing that. And then my son was born early and had a lot of health problems. So this, was ongoing. And then we ended up having my daughter. And I think it was just in 2019, I was working as a nurse and I had my job, and I was kind of like, we're really in the rat race. Like we're, running crazy. Like we're coming home later. My parents are taking care of the kids. We're just running and running and running. And I was like, it's really time for us to just get back into real estate. Like we've always been talking about it. And then I think that was, I ended up, I don't know how it was. Oh, I think it was something I saw in Bigger Pockets. And then I read the Set for Life and I was like, that's it. We have to completely get back into it. And I had been a realtor a long time ago with my mom. And then I was like, well, should I start doing that? And we were still in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time. So we started thinking like, do we buy another fixer? What do we do? And then that's what made me go to the conference. And then I saw the post about the conference. So I started kind of getting back into that. And that's what made us go to the conference. And then we started buying out-of-state properties at that time.
Super cool. So it sounds like real estate has always been kind of it's always been in the back of your mind, right? But now, and you always had the Airbnbs and you did some flips or whatever, but like now is when it starts to get intentional, 2019, 2020. And so I guess like, is it time for the for real deal? Should we get into it, Allie? Or do you guys have anything to say?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I also want to hear from Matthew as well, like what his background was too, and what year this is. Like how you mentioned COVID was kind of like a reset for you. And especially I know, Melissa, you were an RN prior to like real estate. And Matthew's like a little bit, what's your background?
Yeah. So Melissa and I think we kind of got started similar, but separately. Before we met, I actually read Rich Dad, Poor Dad as well. I totally fell into that group. And then I tried out a couple of gurus, and I know this is one of the things that Josh and Brandon were really against when they started Bigger Pockets, and they were these were definitely that fit into that category, and so it kind of led me down a different path. But then we met, and we started bought our first rental property together in Utah, and then fast forward a bit, but essentially we COVID came and we were just around the house a lot, right? Like everybody else. And that's when Melissa found the expo. She's like, I really want to go and check it out and attend it and everything. And so we went together, and it really provided that reset I think that we needed. Say, hey, we're totally in this rat race, and we need to stop going down that route. Because I was the same thing, where it was like a W-2. It's very safe. I had a government job for a long time, with a pension. And so it was really set in that mindset for quite some time, where it was like, this is the safe route, and I'll be able to retire. I'm guaranteed an income when I retire, and but then I also had to wait until I was like 65, 70 years old to retire, and that's not very appealing either. So
yeah, I know that.
So that's essentially what happened.
I hear that with the whole government job and the security there, you kind of get stuck in that mindset of, well, what I only need another 10 more years, 12 more years, whatever it is. I hear that. But yeah, that lines up perfectly for
The For Real Deal. This is Matt and Melissa. This is the first deal that you've ever done. I guess we should we go into the 2014 stuff, or what's more interesting, the 2020? 2020 is like intentional, but 2014, do you guys remember 2014?
2007.
2007.
Ooh.
Okay, you know what? We're gonna drop some bombs here. We're gonna do both. Let's do both.
Woo.
Right? We can do that. It's our show. We can do what we want.
My first house hack was in 2004, and I was
Okay.
completely cash flowing in San Francisco and did a fixer, but that was
Damn.
before we were together, and that was completely unintentional.
Okay,
we probably should talk about
let's just hear the story because it's fun. Obviously, it's not going to be relatable to anybody else, but just so we can rewind the clock back 19 years, right? Is that like George Bush is president? The Red Sox just won the
Wow,
World
that
Series for the
really-
first time. We're putting it into perspective a little bit
myself.
for you. Yeah, 2004. There was no iPhones, and I think Facebook was just started. So, but you were smart enough to buy a house hack in San Francisco.
I did. I actually had gotten out of college and I had not met Matthew yet, but a family member was selling her home and I knew nothing about seller financing. It's not that I knew nothing about real estate. Like I majored in economics and our last year we had real estate classes. And I remember like the professor was like, I have all these properties, like buy real estate. So when this opportunity came forward, I was like, well, okay, this is a good idea. Like, sure, I'll do it. It doesn't matter, whatever you say. And then, so it was actually a great aunt of mine. And then our mortgage guy that was a friend of ours, he's the one that suggested the seller financing. He did the paperwork. He was a really good friend of the family. So I completely trusted him. I did graduated payments. So I started off low because my income wasn't that high. I had just gotten out of college. And I basically had all of my roommates that roomed with me in UC Davis moved down to San Francisco and rent out the rooms. So I was sitting there cash flowing. And at that point, I started to realize the power of real estate and went and got my real estate license because I had the opportunity to do that. And then I bought that house. She actually gave me a good discount. I bought it for $400,000. It was worth $500 at that time. And then I sold it in 2007 for $750. I had fixed it and everything.
Wow.
So
Okay.
Wow.
How much did you put
Perfect
into
timing.
it?
75,000.
Wow. So 475 all in, you sold it for 750, and you had a crystal ball because it sounds like you sold it right at the perfect time. Liz.
Yeah, I was doing real estate with my mom and we saw the beginning coming. So I was like, I need to sell it. So
Wow, amazing. So let's take it back to present day or present-ish day, right around COVID times, 2019, 2020. And real estate is in the back of your mind. You know it's powerful, but now you're serious now. You're gonna get into it and you're gonna stick to it. So what happens? What was your For Real Deal part two in 2019, 2020?
Okay, so we went to the expo and during COVID when it first started around that time, or I think it was before
it was
COVID
right
actually
before.
started. It was right before, and then we were like, we got to do this. And so one of the presenters that we saw during the exposition, and we really liked her presentation. She did a really great job, and so we decided to join her group. And her program essentially helps connect you with realtors who are investor friendly agents, essentially. And so we ended up looking at a lot of different properties. So we found this new agent named Juan who helped us find a duplex that was with a wholesale, and it was in the northern side of Milwaukee. And we ended up going through the deal, and I bought it. It was occupied at the time by two tenants, and this is where I was still really adjusting to the knowledge of just buying real estate without I guess having a lot more experience. So it was a little bit of a rough start because the tenants weren't always paying the rent on time. But I quickly was able to, okay, give them a pay or quit notice. And if they don't pay within 11 days of getting that, you can technically file for an eviction. So I was really firm on setting those boundaries right up front. And so what I found was that they would pay the rent, once they got the email that said, hey, we're going to file for eviction. I would call them as well and let them know, like, hey, the rent's due. This is in the contract. You need to pay it. So that worked, but eventually one of them, he fell behind and we ended up evicting him. and then refilling the unit after doing a little bit of minor renovations in there. And so we did pretty well on it now. So
Awesome. So I got a couple questions on that, like just to take it
sure.
back a little bit is one, how and why did you pick Milwaukee? And two, it's interesting that I want to hear a little bit more about your realtor story of how you were even recommended a realtor who was supposedly supposed to be good and he turned out not to be good. And so, like, first, let's talk about the Milwaukee thing. Why Milwaukee? Sounds like you've never been there before. Are you from there? Do you know people there?
Yeah, no, I actually had never been to Milwaukee, and when I started researching it a little bit on my own, I really liked the city of Milwaukee. There were definitely cheaper prices, which now that I have more experience, I would be a little bit more wary of, just in terms of like what neighborhood you're buying in. Sure, you can get a house for $100,000, but is that really, you know, uh, it depends where you buy. It really does. I mean, I can go buy an expensive house in Milwaukee, right? But it may not cash flow. So it really, the location really matters. I would definitely say that. But overall, I still don't regret the choice, because frankly, we have three duplexes and we're cash flowing somewhere around $2,600 a month right now. So there was a lot of tough challenges and lessons there, but it was worth it, I think. And so, yeah, so I generally liked Milwaukee. First the prices seemed really affordable. I was like, well, we can get like three rentals here for spending less than $100,000. That ended up not being true, but that was the perception. And to be honest too, the agent that did the presentation, he made it sound like a really great investment. And so we decided to dive into Milwaukee.
Awesome. Go ahead.
No, it seems like I guess the second portion of that, when with the realtor, how did you think, or it seems like you had some steps in place in order to know to find your own inspector, like a private party, because as it's mentioned
I
like multiple times that um,
Yeah.
the
And
best deal is the one you say no to. So like, talk more about that.
I think
Yeah, sorry. Let me go on this one a little bit further. And just to be really frank here, so we had previous experience in real estate, but it had been a little while. So I think from learning some tough lessons before, it was don't trust everybody right off the bat. Like it's kind of one of those things where you hear that phrase, trust but verify. But so I really wanted to say like, okay, the inspector and the contractor, they're going to be third party from the realtor because I don't know you. You put on a good presentation, but it doesn't mean that you're the best or that you know everything. You're not a contractor, you're not an inspector. And so the initial numbers came from the realtor. So I was really hesitant on trusting those numbers, and so that's why we got a third party inspector and third party contractor because I was like, no, I'm gonna find somebody that nobody knows and they've got good reviews or recommendations, and I'm gonna have them to do their work. And it turns out it was actually a really good choice because later on um, the inspector found some things that were not told about initially, and the contractor had found a lot more things that needed work. And then ultimately, what happened was is that the realtor later on was selling to other people, and unfortunately, it was found out that the wholesale that he was trying to sell us was the wholesale deal that his wife had signed with the seller, and he didn't disclose that.
Ooh.
So he
Oh,
had he had a financial interest as to why he wanted us to pay a higher price. And so we didn't know that at the time when we pulled out of that deal, but thankfully we did because that's why he was truly trying to push a higher price and he was saying, "No, it's worth more. It's worth more." And I'm like, "Well, the repairs show that it's not." So it changed a lot of things.
Just for the record, that is highly illegal, and he could certainly lose his
yeah.
license for
Yes,
that.
I'm very aware of that
Yeah.
too.
So if you are a real estate agent listening to this, like, and you've got some wholesale and you're an investor as well, like, if you got interest in the property, like, that needs to 100% be
Yeah.
disclosed.
Yes.
And that's the thing. I think just that I was already a realtor, just knowing those things. And then we had an out of state property in 2007 in Utah, it was kind of the same thing where we got hooked up with different people and, we had some different experiences with property management and things like that. So just knowing that, just knowing that the due diligence, we're really big on that, and just going through numbers and, being able to get those, like they say, it's your boots on the ground, right? So being able to forge those relationships with the people that are out of state. So that's really helpful.
You also mentioned how important it is to purchase in a good location. What tips and tricks, what do you do to make sure that you're purchasing in a good location with your lessons learned?
I think number one, I think it's the relationships that you build prior to that. I think any location, I think you just have to run the numbers. Like we've used like the Trulia crime maps, being able to see like what businesses are in the area. Once you see what retail is in the area too, that gives you a good idea. I mean, we were even on, Google Maps, and you're basically taking the overall view, and your Google Earth, and you're looking at the area to see exactly what you see around it. Do you see train tracks that are like right there? How do the neighbors' houses look? But I think it's a lot of networking too with, your realtor and other people. Like we've joined Facebook groups. We're in Facebook groups for like Milwaukee. I was in investing in Augusta, Georgia at the time too. I had a rental there and ended up selling it. But it's just getting to know those people that are there in the location.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think getting to know people in the area is really important. If you're buying a rental property in an out of state area for the first time and you've never visited the city, I would recommend going there and taking a look. That's one of those lessons where I've heard people say like, oh, you don't have to see the property, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, sure, if you've done, 5, 10, 15, 20 deals, maybe you understand a lot more now. Like I feel more comfortable, but if I went into a new market for the first time to somewhere I had never been, I would go out there first. So I would definitely recommend that.
So say
And
you're
that's to make sure that you understand the different neighborhoods.
okay.
I think that's very
That's exactly
important.
where I was getting at. Yeah. Especially
Yeah.
like a lot of people don't have their contractor's license. They don't know, they're not an inspector. They don't know what they're looking for. This might be their first deal. Go out there, and then what? The house is standing. What do I, but yes, neighborhood. And I always tell my clients too, Melissa, you touched on this, is like the maps thing is like so crucial. Even if you plan on purchasing, I work with a lot of military, so they purchase out of state, but then to move into once they PCS, something so like free for everyone is maps.google.com. You insert the address, and the bottom right hand corner is that little yellow guy or gal, I call it a gal, and you just drop her into wherever you are. You can walk the neighborhood, and use the technology that's available to everyone for free.
Yeah, and even having a realtor that will drive by and do video. I'm a realtor here in Northern California, and I have a client that was living in the Bay Area, which for reference, it's only 2.5 hours away. And they were like, I found this great duplex in Sacramento. It looks wonderful. I'm going to do the medium-term rental, travel nurse housing. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to go look at it. And for me, it was a 20-minute drive, and I went by and I'm like, there's no way. Like there is no nurse that is going to live here, and you couldn't tell from the pictures, so you had to go over there. I took some video. I let him know. I was like, don't even bother coming up. It's up to you, but I took the video and I showed him. I was like, this is what's next door. I mean, it was literally like a vacant lot with a bunch of cars. There was stuff going on there that I actually saw. So, just to have that relationship with people, and it's hard to build a relationship with people before you've given them business, but it's something that's really important to try to work on. Like Matthew ended up building a relationship, which he's now friends with his contractor over there in Milwaukee, that he's been actually really helpful, and he helped to show the property when we were trying to put a tenant in it. So things like that.
Nice.
Super, super, super helpful. So what did you buy that duplex is what you ended up with, it sounds like, in Milwaukee. What'd you buy it for? How'd you finance it? Let's get into the juicy details.
Yeah, no, we bought it for $91,000, and we use traditional financing, but we have a 3.5% rate. So a few years ago it may not have been as big of a deal, but today it's great. And I didn't actually have to put any initial money into it. Maybe like $1,000, a couple of minor fixes to get started. So our PITI is around a little over $500. And today we're at $1,600 in gross income. a month.
Wow.
So I think we're, we spend maybe like $800 a month or something like that. So we're doing good on cash flow.
Wow. And so question there is where where were the rents at when you bought it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we bought it, the upstairs was paying 600 and the downstairs was paying 650. The seller only collected $300 deposit on the gal downstairs and nothing on the guy upstairs, and he was the one that ended up getting evicted. But yeah,
Yeah, and so I just want to reiterate there that real estate's a long game, right? And so
Mhm.
1,200 or 1,250 on an 800 or a $500 mortgage after, especially in Milwaukee where maybe vacancy is higher and maybe it's an older property and whatnot, that is certainly less sexy than increasing the rents by 25% over the course of the next couple of years. And now you're cash flowing almost over $1,000 a month. And I'd say
yeah,
that holds true whether you're buying in 2020 or you're buying in 2023 or 2004. The properties don't look as good when you buy it, but the magic is in 5, 7, 10 years later when rents are
Mhm.
up, your mortgage price is the same. And so I just want to encourage people to always be buying ABB, always be buying. We have to coin
yeah.
that.
Yeah, real
Yeah,
estate is very forgiving. You stay in it long enough, it's very forgiving, and it'll pay
absolutely.
really well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and we've only owned that property for a couple of years, so it's the rents have gone up quite a bit. And the seller originally didn't have market rents; he actually lowered them below market rent when she rented to those tenants.
Mm.
So it was, you know, kind of no brainer that I was going to be able to increase the rents, and then they were going up. So
I think that's a really solid point there where that a lot of investors maybe on the newer side miss is they're looking for the undervalue as or rather a list price that's low as opposed to the rents that are low that you can just bump up back to market rent. That's what I did with
Mhm.
my duplex in Tucson where the previous owner had it for like 8 years, never once increased the rent. They had rents from,
mm.
from 15 years ago. So that's a really good point. I want to touch on your eviction. How was working an eviction from out of state across the country? What are some tips and tricks you can give to other people that, so they can avoid that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Wisconsin, evictions are not difficult in Wisconsin. And that was another thing that I actually liked about the market area was that we live in California, which is, I wouldn't want to do an eviction here. But essentially, if they don't pay the rent, they have a 5-day grace period. On day 6, I automatically give them a pay or quit notice. And then 11 days after that, I can serve an eviction notice. So the question is, how do I do that being, thousands of miles away? Well, Facebook is great with our groups. And I found a Milwaukee investors group that was very active. And I asked for a recommendation for somebody that could help with evictions and pay and quit notices. And I found this one guy, Robert. He is fantastic. He charges me $25 to do the pay or quit. And then the eviction, I think, is somewhere around two or 250. But I basically just send him an email and a text message and say, hey, so and so hasn't paid their rent this month. Can you go can you go do the pay or quit? And he takes care of everything from there. His sister is a lawyer. And then, when day 20 comes around, roughly is when I tell the tenants you got to pay by this date. If they don't pay, then I just let him know and he'll go down to the courthouse and file the eviction. And then I basically am just paying the fees. So I did set up a process so it's very clear with each tenant. Day 1, the rent is due. Day 5 is the last day to pay without a late fee. And then day 6, you get the pay or quit. And then usually around like day 20 is when I'll do the eviction notice if needed.
I think in response to your question, Ali, about how to avoid it. So that was our first duplex, and we bought it tenant occupied. And I know it, varies whatever people's choices want to be. But the next 2 that we bought side by side duplexes. We put that as a contingency in the offer that it had to be vacant at the close because we didn't want to have inherited tenants like we did that time that we didn't vet them when they moved in.
I think that's a really wise thing to do. All the horror not all the horror stories, but many of the horror stories that I've heard in real estate are from
Mhm.
inherited tenants. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
luckily for you guys, it wasn't too bad. But that just also emphasizes where you're going to invest, like be particular about what state, right? I think house hacking is one thing, like it's always best just invest in your backyard, whether you're in
Mhm.
California or Arkansas. But if you are going to invest out of state, I highly recommend looking deep into the landlord laws and
Totally.
invest somewhere that is landlord friendly.
Mhm.
I'm originally from Massachusetts, and my parents were like, "Oh, why don't you invest in Massachusetts?" I'm like, "Well, it's expensive. The houses are old, and the landlord laws are horrible." So I am like zero chance I will be investing in Massachusetts. Not to mention the taxes are crazy. And so like, think about where. I don't feel like people are looking into the landlord laws as much as I think they should. And that's another
Yeah.
reason why, we relocated actually to northern Idaho, and Idaho landlord laws are great, but we're like 5 miles from the Washington border. Washington landlord laws are horrible, but there's some
Mhm.
really good property to buy in Washington. And so it's so tempting for us, but we have to just be like, nope, stick to our guns.
I think it depends on what kind of tenants you have too.
Hmm.
So the properties I bought in Milwaukee are not the best neighborhoods, and I and I'm not trying to be you know too judgy, but essentially, it depends where you buy. So I would look at like what are the eviction rates in that area. So Milwaukee, you can actually go on a map through the city. You can see what the eviction rates in different areas. So
Hmm.
then you would want to say, okay, well, maybe this area has higher evictions, versus another area. So I think that'll kind of make a difference too in terms of where you buy. But the other thing too I wanted to throw in there that I found was that when I first started renting, the late fee was $25. And what I found out was that they didn't really care about the $25 late fee because it wasn't a lot of money. So I
Yeah.
raised the late fees up to $75, and not to be greedy, but it was more of just to say, hey, like if you're late, it is going to affect you. And what I found was that they're way more likely to be on time because they don't want to pay the $75, which is what I want, which is what I want for the tenants. I want them to pay on time. So that was actually helpful because they were like, well, we don't want to pay that fee, because I also don't want them to get close to that eviction date. So I found there's different things that I've found that you just tweak things little by little, and you make improvements and so forth, and it helps.
Is it just $75 for after day six, or is it $75 per day after day six?
$75 on day 6 only.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't matter if they're day six or day 13, it's going to be the
Yeah,
same.
no, no, no. I wouldn't charge $75 a day. I
Okay.
think that might be a little bit too much, but yeah, on day 6, if they haven't paid, a $75 fee automatically gets bumped into their account, and then they have to include the late fee with their payment.
Okay. And if you guys are thinking about doing late fees, just make sure you check your state landlord laws. They're going
Mhm.
to be different in every state.
Yes.
And so whatever works for your state. Um,
Yeah, and actually, it's Milwaukee has a class through the city for landlords
Hmm.
on going over the rules. So definitely use your city as a resource. Even if you get into short-term rentals, there's really detailed information in different cities for short-term rental laws, like here in the city that I live in. So definitely utilize your city resources that you can go into. So that was really great that they had like a whole landlord course.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. We hope this episode is inspiring you to take action. If you're thinking about becoming a real estate agent or an agent who wants to join an investor friendly team, just hit me up on Instagram at the Fi Guy, because we are growing our team in Denver, Seattle, San Diego, and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, but also adding to our network in all 50 states. And if you didn't already know this, the Fi team provides a super supportive environment with one on one coaching, accountability, and ongoing training to help develop kick-ass rock star investor friendly real estate agents. So hit me up on Instagram at the Fi Guy, shoot me a DM, and we'll set up a time to chat. Can't wait to chat with you. And so how are you? You bought 3 duplexes, it sounds like, in just a couple of years, right? They are
Hmm.
obviously lower. Were you just saving up 20% down from your jobs, or did you have a,
So
yeah.
sort of. The first one we did the typical 20% down with the traditional financing. The next two, the same realtor one, he brought us this deal, and it was a probate. And they were networking with a probate attorney who presented to him, and then immediately turned around and presented to us. And I, obviously, I was like, I'm very interested. And so they were offering them at $75,000 a piece. They were 10 blocks away from the property that we already owned. And so these ones
Right.
were a different beast, if you will, but because they
Really
needed a lot, they needed
affordable,
a lot
yeah.
of work. So I actually found a hard money lender that would loan, do the purchase loan, but also loan for the refinance or the reconstruction as well. And so they were loaning up to 80% of the rehab estimate. So rehab estimate came in around $80,000. So they were loaning us 64,000 of that plus the purchase. We negotiated the prices down to 70,000, and this was assuming the ARV was 300 after they were fixed. Wow. So again, just to review, so we purchased each for 70. Rehab was at 80, so that was 140 plus the 80 is 220, and the ARV was supposed to be at 300.
Okay.
So fast forward a little bit, after doing all the renovations, which was you could do a whole nother podcast on that one, but
it's a year.
It took a while, and it was very extensive. And again, this is why I would.
He did the
recommend,
rehab from afar.
Yeah, I did it all from. I managed the whole thing from here remotely with all different people, but we ended up spending close to 150,000 on the rehab. And then the ARV actually came in at I think around like 260, 270, if I remember correctly. But I know first you're like, oh my God, that sounds terrible. And it was a lot more money out of pocket, definitely. But we're also cash flowing $2,000 on those 2 units. So we ended up spending personally, I think somewhere around, 80 or 90,000. But our cash on cash return is still pretty good on those. And they're completely renovated. So, we didn't do expensive stuff. It was just that, the work that needed to be done was a lot more expensive than I understood when I bought them. That was the problem.
You have done everything. Like within your first couple of deals, you've done hard money loans, out-of-state evictions, out-of-state buying, rehabs from afar. Do you self-manage? Like you've done the whole thing in just a couple of years, which is crazy.
And then we did wrap those up into a commercial loan. So because they were side by side, they allowed us to wrap it up into a commercial loan. So that was cool, and we got a good rate on that. It was like 4.5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
wow,
which was really good.
That's awesome. So starting from like the hard money loan, I feel like a lot of new investors are like, okay, great, I have the time, I have more time than I do money. I don't have money. How would one find somebody trustworthy to get a loan from? What does that process even look like? How did you find yours? All of that.
We actually went with I don't know how we found them. What was their Coventus?
Coventus, yeah.
Coventus. They're pretty. They do a lot of different loans, so it wasn't like a random person. Like they have their business and stuff. Like
how we found them.
I think we found them through. I'm sorry. There's another big hard money one that a lot of the investors have talked about, like on the podcast and things. It starts with the C too. I think they're out of Washington, but they basically couldn't help us because they couldn't go that high on the percentage they would rent. And so then they told us, they referred us to the other hard money lender, and we kind of vetted them out, and it worked out.
So pretty much,
we actually saw that we hadn't met the guy, and I met him at Best Ever. He had a booth there,
Jeffrey.
and I was like, hey, you are a hard money lender. Yeah.
Nice. So you pretty much started with like Google, and then just keep going down like the line until somebody can help you.
Yeah, I think within like the investor groups, we had heard of one hard money lender, and we started making calls. Like I'll search like the Facebook groups, and see, or go through the threads and see who people recommend, and then go through there.
And I remember calling. We did call several hard money lenders and get several quotes. So that's another thing I would definitely recommend is don't just pick one in there and say like, yeah, we can do that. I would call around and get quotes from multiple lenders before you move forward.
Super cool. Was it? I guess curious. Like I know. Hard money is expensive, right? And so did that scare you at all, especially as the rehab was going longer and it was becoming more expensive and all these things?
It did, but we had, it was 8.25%. And then this was a little bit before the rates went up. So 8.25%, although it was definitely like double, at that time what we would have gotten for traditional. But it didn't, I don't know.
Historically, like 8 is not that bad.
Yeah,
right. 8.5, especially on a hard money loan. Is not that bad. And you don't have a choice. So you get stuck where you like run out of cash to put down payments. You have to take other avenues so that you continue to buy properties. I don't think you should, limit yourself, because it's like not everybody just has cash laying around, right? So And then another important thing with the hard money is that you have to realize is sometimes you have to put the money up front. So we're like, it's a lot of things that people don't know. You think you're going to be getting the reimbursements, but you have to put the money up front. And then there's a certain amount of work that has to be done where you get the payouts over time. So we would run into that. We're like, oh, we need to scramble and, be able to pay this so that this is done. And then we get the reimbursements. Because for the construction loan, you get reimbursements every so often, depending on how much work is completed.
Yeah, that was another thing that I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
So you still needed to have funds available. Did you have to raise money from other
Yes.
people, or?
No, we were,
Kind of see.
we were fortunately,
Yeah.
there was another deal that we did before all these that we can talk about later if there's time, but we had the funds available. And so we were fortunate in that position where, like, hey, we're, to get our first payout from the lender, we're going to have to spend, $25,000, $30,000. And then they give you 80% of that back because that's essentially, what's their lending rate for the rehab up to 80. So we were basically doing that each time. The other thing we did, which worked out okay, is we had a Amex credit card that we were able to get points on, and and we actually use it for hotels for vacations. And so I would spend $25,000-$30,000 on the credit card, pay it off, and then start all over again. And I think we still have free hotel stays. That
We stayed in
we've been
Milwaukee
using.
for free. He went
Yeah,
over
I've
there
stayed
to
in
help
Milwaukee for free as well.
manage some of the rehab for 10 days, and it was free.
So I would recommend to be careful with their credit cards, but if you know that money is going to come back to you, it was a great way to get an extra benefit from doing that. So yeah.
I've never been so tempted to stay in the glorious Milwaukee.
It was like Hampton Inn, so not terribly good, but
But free for
Over, overlooking Lake Michigan, and I guess one quick question
But
that
but free everywhere.
Yeah.
Honestly, we spent all that money. We got free 5 nights in Disneyland, so that was
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's amazing. That's amazing. One quick question. So it sounds like you're just burring, right? Like that's what you did. Maybe you didn't even know the term at the time, but you bought it with hard money, expensive. You rehabbed it, and then I imagine you eventually refinanced it to get that monthly payment down, and then you rented it out.
Oh yeah,
Fully
I forgot
rented,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah, so when we refinanced it, we did pull money out. So I think after everything was said and done, I think we were out of pocket still 50,000, and it was not quite what the plan was. But at the same time, like again, I want to really iterate, like this was a really hard deal to do. Fixing him up out of state, having way more renovations than we expected and everything like that. But at the end of the day, now I'm from those 4 units, we're generating $500 a door, so $2,000 a month off of $50,000. So it's not bad. And I get a huge amount of experience from that. I learned how important it was to build team members. I learned how to manage people from out of state. I learned what was important to renovate and what not. We made sure we stayed, as low cost as we could without sacrificing too much. So we didn't buy really expensive floors or really expensive cabinets. But everything still
looks
costs
nice.
money.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they turned out really nice.
Yeah.
For what we did, and and I didn't cut corners. We like Melissa just has come across other people with rehab properties here, and
Yeah.
maybe they do really bad with electrical, their plumbing or whatever. And so I really wanted to make sure I did everything right, because if we hold on to these, say for 20 or 30 years, I'm also not going to have any major problems with them. That was another goal that I really had, was that now they're renovated, like I don't have to touch the plumbing again, I don't have to touch the electrical again. Maybe I have to do paint, and do the floors in 10 years or something, but that's it.
And I'm sure you've come across this, Craig, too, being a realtor, but that's the thing I want to reiterate too to investors, especially starting out, is don't cut corners. That extra 5,000, 10,000 that you may spend is going to save you in the long run, because I have been coming across flips here in my area where there's corners cut and it turns into problems. You're gonna, when you sell, things will be discovered, or they're not discovered and you're in trouble. If they're discovered, you're going to get haggled down on the price anyway. So you're going to have to come out with the money anyway. So just don't cut corners.
Yeah, I love that. It's usually, the shortcuts are usually actually the long way around. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, so I guess my last, Allie, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, you really have done everything. Oh yeah, I forgot I refi too. I forgot I did a burr. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I guess like just a quick recap here, right? Like like real estate was in the back of your mind kind of in the beginning, probably from 2004 to 2019. You started taking action in 2019 with that first property. You wisely backed out, bought a duplex, evicted them, all that good stuff. And then you purchased two more duplexes side by side. And all that has basically got you to now where you've got $2,600 of passive income in a cheaper market, Milwaukee. And where to next? I guess that's the main thing.
I think the next property is going to be local. So everything, and talking about like where to get the money, like all the money that we had to put into real estate initially came from appreciation from real estate. And a lot of it came from selling our homes that we did, like the live-in flips and the fixers and, the house hacking and all of that. So we made a move 2 years ago and moved a couple hours away where we can find a newer home for less money. We were actually planning on house hacking, but now Matthew and I are using the in-law unit as office / filming studio, whatever you want to call it. And eventually we may house hack. But I think the next step is we're in an area right now that is booming with population growth, job growth, medical is coming over here. So I think what we're going to do is buy a local turnkey property and midterm rental it, because that's the only way we're going to be able to figure out how to cash flow here in California. You can't do it long term. And short term gets a little iffy where you can start short term and then the laws change. So I think our next step is going to be midterm rental.
Yeah,
Locally.
one thing I'll add there too is you're going to find something a lot different investing in California than in Milwaukee. Is that you're buying properties for 90 to 100,000 in Milwaukee, and maybe in a couple of years they're worth 150, which is a 50% gain. But really, 50,000 is not really moving the needle that much for you probably. But when you're in Sacramento, buying $500,000 properties, and those increase 50% maybe over the next 5 to 10 years, now you're looking at $250,000, which it's much more, which will make you much more wealthy. So I think it's good. Personally, I invest in a couple different markets. I've got like my cash flow steady market, and I've got my appreciation markets, and I like to kind of balance the two out. Awesome. Well, Matt and Melissa, this has been an amazing story. I think we are going to head into the final four, but before we do you have any other words of wisdom for our audience?
I would just say stick it out. I think the key here was not giving up or quitting. The renovations on the 4 units that I was doing, it was really tough. There were a lot of days where you just wanted to throw in the towel and you're like, well, I can't really anyways, but just don't give up. I think that there were a lot of days it felt like things were not going right. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to, we could lose everything because there was so much more money coming out of the account than, that I knew was going to come back. But in the long run, it ended up being a really good deal just because we're cash flowing so well on those now. So I would just say, don't give up. And I think the other thing too is that these deals, I learned so much from them, especially, even doing them out of state, that it's hard to put a price on that knowledge, and so I think that's really, really important, is that you have to take action and try and do your very best and learn from it. And if you do that's what's really, really valuable, is that knowledge and experience.
Yeah, and I think for me, what Craig, what you just said is actually really important to focus on. And it's, don't be scared also of, investing in your own backyard and you have to have that balance of appreciation and then steady cash flow. And if you can make it work and get creative, there's ways to get creative in those higher price markets. I've seen it all the time, and ADUs, things like that, the house hacking. So always try to do that too, so it balances out, because you'll make a lot more quicker. In our area, it's gone up 200% in the last 10 years. So,
wow.
That's huge. So
Love that. All right, Matt and Melissa, you've dropped a lot of good wisdom on us today, but now it is time for the final four.
No.
The final four.
I need to sync it up better. Right?
Yeah. Allie, you sound like salad fingers.
You're
Do you know what salad fingers is?
Thank you. Thanks.
Huh?
awesome.
Yes, of course I know you.
The rusty ladle or whatever. Yeah. Okay,
You
ready?
know what, Craig? That is not the first time I've heard that. So I need to look into this.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, you need to look into salad fingers. It is the creepiest turtle, or I think it's a turtle, that you'll ever meet.
Oh no,
All right.
I know what salad fingers is. This is not the first time I've been told
Oh, it's never
about this
even
connection.
told.
So I need
I
to.
see.
I guess I need to go to therapy now. But that's fine, Craig. I'll figure this shit
Yeah,
out.
it's okay. I know a guy if you need a therapist. We can meet right after this.
Thanks. Perfect. I'll take them.
Virtual.
All right, well, Ali, why don't you kick us off for the final four?
Yeah, since there are two of you, I am hoping for two books. What book are you currently reading?
I just wrapped up The Obstacle is the Way.
Ooh, Ryan Holiday.
Ryan Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Nice. And Matthew?
I'm reading Who Not How.
Ooh, nice.
Very good. David
I
Sullivan.
still haven't read those. They're on my list.
Oh, you must have a long list. Those should be a top of your list.
Either.
Oh, those are
It's a
both-
really good
I
book.
should do that next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been meaning to read that one too.
Yeah, if you're doing too many things yourself, it's a great book to read.
I mean, Matt,
Perfect.
sounds like you already knew that from all the out-of-state rehabs you've been doing.
Yes. Yes.
All right, second
Really
question.
need that book.
Second question is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
No plan B. And just to give a little background on that, it's actually a YouTube video that I saw from Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's like a 12-minute video or whatever. But he goes into a lot of detail why he never had a plan B, and how he was so determined and so focused on his goal that he never made a plan B, and how it's actually a terrible idea to make a plan B, because then you're kind of giving yourself an out, and he said as soon as you start thinking about plan B, you're not thinking about plan A. And so I always have that in my head where it's like, no, there's no plan B.
When it
There's
gets
just
hard,
plan
we
A.
tell each other, no plan B.
Yeah, there's no plan B. Like if you're thinking about it, forget it. We're not doing it. And so that's really changed my mindset a lot.
Yeah, all in.
So I don't have any other ideas. It's real estate or nothing. So
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, I think for me, the best piece of advice is, when you're going to you want to do something, find the people who have done it before you, and your path is your path. So if you're going to find, if you're interested in, investing in fix and flips, and you find those people, but also, don't be afraid to have your path and follow those people. Like I said, start adding, if you're on social media, add the people that, are doing what you want to do. Don't get that shiny object syndrome, because if you want to invest in real estate, that's really broad. So you can do all kinds of things. I mean, I've gone down the rabbit hole of 3 months of trying to look into a different strategy, and I wasted my time because I should just be focused on one thing. So definitely just focus on that one thing, stay your path, don't give up. And, you can get really good at something if you just keep learning that one thing and practicing it over and over again.
Awesome. Question number 3. What is your why?
I think my why is, I have kids, and my why is not my kids. My why is for my kids to see what possibilities are out there. They could, I could give them, we can stay the course and live the life we live, and it's fine. I grew up in a middle-class family. I'm perfectly happy. I had a great childhood. It's fine. But so I don't think like, my kids have to, do all these crazy things, but I want them to see the possibilities. If you want to do something, whatever it is that you want to do, don't say like, I can't, ask, how can I? If you have that question in your head and you keep moving forward, like, how can I do that? And find a way to do it, then, that opens up a whole new opportunity for your life. So I really want them to see, when you have a goal and you want to reach it, don't go with the norm. People will always have something to say, think you're crazy, and just, keep moving forward. So I think that's why I want us to really be able to, retire early and do all those things, so that they can see that those things are possible. That's really important.
Love that.
Ditto what Melissa said. Mine too is a few years ago, actually during that expo, we saw another speaker, Rich Fettke, and he went through an exercise about the future you. And that, I think that was one of the biggest changes I'd had in my mindset, was going through that exercise. And you can find it on YouTube. So if you Google Rich Fettke future you, I think it comes up. But is essentially you walk through like what the future you, the most successful version of you, what do they look like? What are they doing? How are they? And all that. And so when you really, really get that image and that feeling of what your potential is, how far you can go and what you can accomplish, you really start to realize like, wow, like I'm there's so much more I can do with my life. And so I just really want to know that I'm trying to achieve everything that I'm capable of achieving, and moving towards those goals of being the future me. And so I think really my why is I want to know that I can do it, and that I'm actually doing it. I'm trying my best to make those changes. And so I think over the last few years, Melissa and I have seen a great deal of changes, and there's been a lot of positive changes. And I think it's great because we do share it with our children. We tell them what we're doing. We explain things to them in terms of like we're taking these steps so that we can achieve this and stuff like that. And we talk to them about making goals.
Yeah, they're learning about mindset and things that we weren't learning
Yeah.
about, So
Yeah.
we do goal setting with them and things like that. So I think that's important.
I love that the future you and like super and like envisioning where you want to go. There in my we're all pretty much all like realtors here. One of my trainings that we had with a coach, we had like similar to that, envisioning your future self, and then once you have all of what you want to be, writing yourself an apology letter, or writing your family an apology letter for not achieving the goals that you set out for yourself. If you want to bump it up another more and potentially freaking
Yeah.
cry,
That's really
yeah,
cool.
like write a letter to your son and daughter and say, I am sorry that I did not achieve that. Like that, that was tough. So if you ever want
Yeah.
a good cry session on a Friday night, I suggest doing that too, because
Yeah, I've
that's,
heard put a picture up
100%.
of your family and when you don't want to make your calls and do your stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
sorry, there you are. I'm not doing this for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like as realtors too, like one thing I've been kind of training my team with is you need to give, like we don't really have bosses as real estate agents, right? And so you need to create a boss, and that boss should be your family, your son, your daughter, your granddaughter, and be like, oh, I'm afraid to make a phone call, right? Like some people are just afraid to pick up the phone and dial. It's like, what would your son say if they saw you, Mr. and Mrs. All Powerful, afraid to make a few phone calls, right? Like, what a wimp do you look like to your son?
Yeah.
So I think that's so powerful.
Yeah,
So,
it is.
yeah. Okay, so last question, and you can't say no plan B. What is the best pickup line you guys have?
The best what?
Pickup line.
Pickup line?
You can't say no plan B.
who are they picking up?
I don't know. I remember seeing the questions ahead of time, but I don't remember that one for some reason.
That was a surprise one.
I don't know. See, I want to say don't give up. So, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I ultimately really believe that's the key is don't give up, because that's what happened.
know. Sorry. Sorry, pickup line like you want to pick up, like you want to pick up a girlfriend or your wife, right?
Okay, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I thought we were reading it.
Yeah, that's what I meant by
I
that.
can't be suggesting that. My wife is right here.
No plan B.
I was like, my wife's here. I can't.
Sorry.
Best pickup line.
I made a bad joke about no plan B.
Yeah, I was like, wait, no plan B? That's not a pickup line. But yeah, I have no idea. I'm so stumped.
I used to when we very first started dating. I used to tell her that I noticed her like staring at me, and she would get mad because she's like, "No, I didn't." And
So that's the worst pickup line ever.
Yeah. So it was a really
annoying.
terrible thing, but I did do that. So
What was it? Stop staring at me?
So. No. I noticed you were looking
liked
at
him,
me.
and
But she
I'm
did
not
because
true.
we're married.
No.
I love these stories of like the back and forth of how people met.
I have no idea.
Yeah. Allie, what's your favorite
That's
pickup
funny.
line?
Oh man. Okay. So obviously I'm gay, and it's a gay one. And here I am forgetting it. It's actually a running joke now with like, anyway, everyone, wait, hold on. Let me think about this. You're putting me on the spot here. You're going to make me blush, Craig. It's about a freaking new, spaghetti. Every spaghetti is straight, like in a straight line until it's not. Essentially, until I don't want to make like a super inappropriate joke, but I'll leave it at that. Every spaghetti is straight. Yeah, I'll stop.
I've seen some good ones that I forgot.
Every spaghetti is straight until it's not.
That one's more of a bar.
Yeah, I think
That's hilarious.
It goes further, but.
I hope you still like me. I get it, because before you boil a spaghetti, it's straight, and then you put it in and it's ready to eat, it goes unstraight. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'll just say the joke. Okay. If you have kids in the car, maybe like stop this episode now. But every spaghetti is straight until it gets wet. There it is. Boom. Okay. You can fire me.
There you go. Boom.
Hilarious.
Okay. I'm gonna have to
Better
say
than mine. We're stumped.
Yeah.
Been so long.
The one that I use is super cheesy, but this can be used at any time almost. If you go to eat with your spouse, you drop a sugar packet on the ground and say, "Oh, I think you dropped your name tag," and that one is always funny and super cheesy.
Hey, sugar.
Hey, sugar. All right, Matt, Melissa, your pickup lines need some work, but at least you got real estate going for you. So where can people find out more about you?
You can find me across all social media at Melissa Roybal Homes. That's Melissa Roybal Homes.
Amazing. And Matt?
And you can find me on Instagram under REI Coder Matthew.
Perfect.
Oh,
Awesome.
yeah.
That's probably the
REI Coder Matthew.
And we didn't touch about that. You're like super into like spreadsheets and math. So if you ever have any questions, I'm sure maybe could they reach out to you about analyzing properties?
Yeah. I have lots of spreadsheets. I'm a software engineer now, and I'm launching my own startup. So that's why I spend a lot of my time.
Rentplan.com.
Cool.
Rentplan.com. So you can check it out.
What's the startup?
Nice.
Just real quick. I'm just interested.
So I'm building a real estate investing startup for investors, obviously, that are basically getting started. They want to systemize their business and they want to scale. So I'm essentially using my experiences to get started, and what types of things do I need to do to systemize my business, and how can I do that through software? So we just launched last year. We have a lot of exciting things coming out this year, new features, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's free right now, so you can sign up for a free account and check it out.
What is it called again?
Rentplan.com.
Oh, yeah, the website's rentplan.com. And you can also go to Instagram and you can look up Rentplan as well there.
All right. You got ChatGPT and we got rentplan.com. Let's go. Changing the game here. All right. Matt, Melissa, thanks so much for coming on the show. This has been truly a pleasure to get to know you guys a little bit better and hear your story. And thank you for sharing with everybody as well. So again, thanks so much, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you,
Thank you.
Allie. This
Thank
is
you
a
both for
blast.
having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
And that was Matt and Melissa. Allie, how did you feel about Matt and Melissa?
The two of them, they're so funny. I love them. I love how much they have done together and separately, because they started investing separately. Clearly they've been married for a while because they don't have pickup lines, which is probably a good thing. But
Yeah.
their journey was so cool. That was awesome to listen to.
Yeah, and I wonder what their favorite type of spaghetti is. But Allie, the spaghetti one was the real deal, I have to say. Anyway, I can't get over the straight spaghetti. And yeah, but no, Matt, Melissa.
Grace knows
they're
about
awesome.
it too. So
Grace, oh God, I'm gonna ask her what her favorite type of spaghetti is. See what she should be like. What the hell are you talking about? But honestly, their story is super cool. Like the fact that Melissa bought something in 2004 in San Francisco, right? Things were still expensive in San Francisco back then. Of course, that property is probably worth over $1 million today. But the moral of the story is like buy real estate and wait, and you can just see the power in it over the long term. Like even the properties that they bought in Milwaukee weren't great when they bought them, but they made them great, and now they're going to be great for the long term. It's like financial independence. It's a lot of work up front, and then you get a lifetime of coasting. Same thing with real estate investing. A lot of work up front and hopefully a lifetime of coasting. So yeah, if you guys haven't already, please, please, please leave a rating and review for this show. Let us know that you do on Instagram. I'm the Fi Guy. Allie, what's your Instagram? Allie the Agent? Are there some dots in there?
Allie the Agent. No,
Or is it
well, there
all-
are dashes, no dots, just dashes. And Allie is spelled A-L-I.
Allie the Agent. And is there anything else you want to add before we head out for this week?
Thank you so much for having me on, Craig. That's all I wanted to add.
Well, thanks so much for being on and filling the very big shoes of Miss Ziana McIntyre. But Allie, this is a start of a new venture, and I'm super happy to keep going with you. So with that being said, guys, have a great week, and we'll see y'all next time.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.